Hi and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for Tulip and Virtuals on how to take your manufacturing operations to the next level with paperless production. I hope you all can hear and see what we're doing. If not, send a message in this chat. We are joined today by three experts in the field. Daniel, with over 25 years of experience, working towards several different manufacturing industries, from automotive, aerospace, and electronics, mainly with focus on digital transformation, continuous improvements, and efficiency improvements. We also have Lee from Tulip, with over 30 years of experience with companies such as Siemens, Emerson, and AspenTech. Lee has responsibility for Tulip sales across UK, Ireland, and the Nordics. We also have Salim from IAC. He spent several years in the IAC group working as an operator to production technician, manufacturing engineer. He is now responsible to lead the transformation of IAC's plants into smart factories. We will cover three main topics today. Daniel will show you manufacturing trends, challenges, and opportunities. Lee will talk about the new pillars in success in manufacturing, and Salim will share how they built operations that are future ready. If you have any questions along the way, please utilize the chat throughout the webinar, and we will answer all the questions at the end of the session. With that, I will hand over to Daniel, who will start off the conversation.
All right, thank you very much, Kimberly. I hope everyone is alert and awake, and I would like to first of all welcome you all to this co-hosted event by Tulip, based over in Boston in the US, and Virtual Manufacturing based headquartered here in Gothenburg in Sweden. When I look at the participation list, I see that we should have around 70 plus participants that have registered for the event, which is fantastic. And I hope you will gain some highlights and some input to your further discussions along the way here during the hour that we have in front of us. I do see that the majority of the participants are coming from the Scandinavian countries. I've also realized that we have some international guests with us, so an extra special thank you to those of you joining us from outside Scandinavia. We are headquartered here in Sweden. If you don't know what Sweden is, it's a little small country up in the northern part of Europe. Belongs to a group of countries, including Finland, Norway, and Denmark, called Scandinavia. Very, very long country. We have just completed our summer vacations up here. Typically, we have nice weather up here also, not only snow and igloos. This summer, we did have one nice day. I think it was on the 25th of May. Otherwise, it's been a horrible summer. But now we're all excited and ready to go for the fall here. All right, let's get the show on the road. I was given the opportunity to just talk or give an introduction here on some of the trends and some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that we see within the manufacturing industry. And what's exciting to see also is that once again, if we look at the participation list, we have companies joining us today, from one-piece production to high volume production. We have companies that are manufacturing small, tiny parts, but we also have companies that are manufacturing some gigantic machines. So I hope we will inspire you all during this presentation. Right, let me just start off a bit with some of the challenges or maybe trends that we see in the manufacturing industry today. And what I'd like to start off with is taking a look at a picture that looks like this. And what we see here is a picture that it's published once per year. And what it actually tells us is the amount of data transactions and the amount of information that is spread over the internet in 1 minute. And what is interesting to see when we analyze this picture, and it's a picture that's been published for several years. This year we do see some new companies and some new logos that have arrived. But if you look at some of the figures, and I think the figures are the main thing here, that in 60 seconds, which is not a whole lot of time, we have tremendous amounts of data that is being published and spread across the internet. If we just take some examples, from Google when it comes to searches, or the amounts of emails, I think it's about 341 million emails that are sent in 1 minute. Now, the fascinating thing about this is that with all this data being spread, the companies and the logos that we see here, they have one thing in common. They are very digital companies, but they're also talking about some terminologies that we are not really using today in the manufacturing industry. One of them, the terminology is platform. All of these companies are referring to something they call a platform. And then the next terminology that they're using is something that they refer to as applications or apps. And if we typically look at ourselves and we go down on the manufacturing shop floor, when we talk about platforms or we talk about applications, they are seldomly seen on the manufacturing shop floor. With that said, I would just like to sort of a bit of a heads up that where are we going to in the future? My personal view is that I'm not going to say that we should compare our manufacturing shop floor to the internet, but I do believe that there's a tremendous amount of learnings and advantages that we can take from what we've seen is happening on the internet. In other words, if we can start collaborating and collecting data and analyzing data in what we call, applications that can be spread on the manufacturing shop floor, I think there's a great advantage that we can take of that. Right. Let's just continue a bit more here. When we're talking about the manufacturing industry, I think it was in the early 1970s that we believed or we thought that, the way to create efficiency is to automate a process. By automation, I mean typical, robot technologies, different types of robot technologies. It could be, welding, it could be painting, it could be pick and place out of an NC machine, but it could also be within logistics. In other words, we're looking at different types of automation equipment to look at material replenishment, as an example. However, what we have seen during the last decade or so is that a lot of companies have come a long way when it comes to automation and are good at what they're doing, but we still believe that there's one second here. We still believe that there's a fundamental key that we're somehow missing, and that is the fact that irrelevant of how much automation we introduce to the shop floor, we are still extremely dependent on our working colleagues. To actually could be program the automation equipment, but it could also be everything else around what is not automated. Personally, I love statistics, I love figures, and I love talking about fact-based decisions. And if we look at some of the pictures in the picture that I'm showing right now, we see that on average, when it comes to mistakes that are actually being made on the shop floor, 7 to 80% of all the mistakes that are actually being made on the shop floor are still somehow caused by humans. And this is a figure. It's a general figure from many different manufacturing industries, but those figures are pretty high. In other words, if we don't treat our colleagues, our workforce, and actually let them grow with skills, we will still have 7 to 80% mistakes being made. We also see that we have a general problem when it comes to skills in the manufacturing industry. And we see that there's potentially a lot of jobs that could be lost, and actually a lot of money that could be lost by not being able to educate our workforce in what will be coming in the future. If we look at the very end there, we see that 70% of the skills that we are looking at for the future actually have to do with some kind of a digital transformation. So these are just some statistics that I'd like for you just to pick them up, take them with you to your own organization, and start thinking in these terms on what are the statistics or what are the figures that you are discussing inside your own organizations. So let's be honest with ourselves. I mean, when it comes to the manufacturing shop floor, what we see as a trend is that even though we are talking about terminology such as Industry 4.0 or the smart factory and so on, we see that when it comes to frontline operations, in other words, the operators on the shop floor, they are very much analog today. And I'm going to show a few pictures here now, and hopefully some of you will recognize the pictures. If not, hats off to you. When we're looking at things like data collection, I mean, if we want to improve, we need data. We typically see pen and paper. There's a lot of paper being circulated on the shop floor today, where we actually expect our colleagues, our operators to be filling the paper forms or the papers with information. In other words, we're spending a lot of time to collect data that potentially could be automatically generated. When it comes to collaboration, it's still a very, very analog process. Most of you or many of you are probably using some kind of a daily stand-up board, etc., where you are looking at, we want to bring issues to, or we want to inform and collaborate with our colleagues around issues that potentially can happen on the shop floor, or we want to follow up certain areas. Very, very analog process. And last but surely not least, when it comes to the fun part, which is actually analyzing the data that we've collected to be able to improve, this is also a very, very analog process. So the summary of this, and what I'm trying to get at, is that when we look at trends for the future within the manufacturing industry, we see that we will take a transformation, or we are in the process of transforming ourselves from what we call an analog world to some kind of a digital world that will allow us to collect data, collaborate with our colleagues, and analyze the data in real time. In other words, the way that we will improve our operations will be based on the data that we're collecting, the collaboration that we're doing, and then analytics that we're doing in real time. And last but not least, I mean, if we look at the way that we are running our operations today, we are expecting, not only the operators that are on the front line of the operations, but also the support team behind them, such as team leaders or supervisors or engineers or product designers and so on, to become knowledge workers. But I think one trend or one challenge that we do have is to actually give them the tools to become knowledge workers. And I personally don't believe that the tools in a modern society that we should be giving our colleagues are pen and paper. There are many more more digital tools that could potentially be used that will sort of kickstart the way that we want to improve. All right, just to give you some other challenges from what we've seen, and this is just based on some of the projects that we've been involved in and some of the insights that we've seen from the manufacturing industry. And I would say this is also irrelevant of what industry you're coming from. If you're a tier one supplier to the automotive or the aerospace industry, or if you're working within life science industry or med tech industry, or if you're an OEM within automotive, I do hope that you can see some of the bullets that we list here as some of your own personal challenges also. What we've seen is that in general we have difficulties in actually finding and presenting data and make the data visible in real time. A lot of us are working with what we call Kaizen events, where we collect data and then we analyze them, and then a week later we can actually get the results. this is a limitation. We can also see that we're struggling with workforce fluctuation, and this could be post-pandemic problem, or it could be another challenge that we have in front of us. In other words, it's difficult for us to find skilled personnel for the shop floor. Paper, I mentioned that before. In many operations today, we're more or less drowning in paper, and this is not the way that we should be empowering the most important people in the organization. In other words, the ones that are out on the shop floor. Quality issues, yeah, we for sure we might have quality issues when it comes to processes, or when it comes to products, or even when it comes to certain suppliers, and this in turn slows down the number of iterations that we can use, or how quickly we can introduce new product or new products to the shop floor. Just to mention a few more, and I hope that some of these bullets you can actually recognize yourself from your own operations. Siloed data. What do I mean by that? I mean that even if we are collecting data, the data becomes siloed in a way that not everyone has access to it. We might be collecting data, concerning OEE or whatever, but not everybody does have the access to that information. And if we don't have access to the data, we cannot actually analyze the data in order to improve. There are some others here that we're just mentioning a few here. I'm sure there's many more. ERP connected systems from operations. Most of us have some kind of an ERP system in the background that is running the operations. However, it might not actually be connected to the actual frontline operations. In other words, the shop floor, which means in turn that we need a whole staff of people actually, looking at what information, what data is in the ERP system, and how are we using that data on the shop floor. Just mentioned downtime when it comes to machines, when it comes to laborers, and I would say that the struggle with actually visualizing the data. Last but for sure not least, when it comes to job tracking data, we actually have difficulties in knowing where are our different jobs placed on the shop floor. How many operations have they gone through? So take these with you and just think about them in terms of your own operations. Some of them you might have seen yourselves, and think about in terms, what are we actually doing on a daily basis to take care of them? All right, I will just jump forward a bit here now. All right, I'm just going to mention a few words about what we call discovery-driven digital transformation. And I think in general, we do have an issue in the era that we're living now, when everybody is talking about smart factories and digital transformations. And somehow we believe that if we want to, change ourselves into a more digital organization, we believe that it has to cost a lot of money, or it has to become some kind of a mega project. And this is not the case. And in many cases, when we do spend too much time and too much money and try to make it a big project, we often fall flat on our faces. In other words, we're not looking at the actual values that this project will lead to us, and trying to benefit from the values on a daily basis, instead of doing something and then actually finding the values 2, 3, 4 years down the line. Why is this happening? I believe that in many cases it has to do about knowledge. That we do have the C-level management, we have the CEOs and the top executives that believe that if we want to somehow, the digital disruptors that are coming on the market that are challenging us. I mean, if we want to take a gigantic step, we have to have a gigantic project, a gigantic model, and we have to put a lot of money into it. Whereas the solution on a personal level, I believe, is don't make it too big. Start incremental, start in small steps, and discover, what is the value that we're actually giving back by performing the digital transformation. Look at your own problems. Look at your own low-hanging fruits that you have in your own operations, and try to fix them. But don't forget that somewhere, like coming back to the initial slide I had, that talking about platforms, I mean, we have to be able to collaborate. And if we can have a platform where we're actually, that allows us to somehow build our own applications to solve many of these issues in the time slots that we want, not making it too big, I think that could be a great advantage. All right, last slide from my side before I'm going to hand over to my friend Lee. If we just look at the vertical axis there, we're actually saying that how much of the traditional IT budget is spent on different areas of our operations. On the horizontal line, we have our different disciplines within the company. So we could have some kind of an engineering department, we have some kind of procurement, we have our manufacturing operations, quality, environment, safe and healthy, service, finance, control, HR. And typically, a lot of the IT budget is spent around what we refer to as an ERP system. The ERP system is what is running the operations. Depending on what discipline you're working on or working in, we might have some more niched products, when it comes to CAD tools or when it comes to different type of analysis tools such as CAE, or when it comes to HR, we might have different types of payroll systems. When it comes to procurement, we might need some kind of procurement portal. But these are all isolated, siloed systems that are typically not interacting with each other. Within the manufacturing domain, we have during several years been talking about these MES systems, which is great, but it's very focused on the manufacturing operations, and the other disciplines of our company are not necessarily taking benefits of it. Now, when we start talking about platforms and we start talking about operations, I'd just like to briefly introduce what we call an operations platform. And I believe my friend Lee will talk more about that, and Salim here also in the near future. But operations platform, it's a new way of thinking where we're not only focusing on the manufacturing discipline, but we're also trying to involve other disciplines within our company. So this should be once again seen as a platform where we can actually develop different kinds of applications, if we want to call them that, that will support us in our continuous improvement and trying to create efficiency for the company. So last takeaways from my side is think about where you are at the moment. Don't forget to involve your workforce. What can we do to actually help them improve their everyday operations? Start simple, even if it's just eliminating one piece of paper. At least you've done something. Think about how you're actually collecting data and analyzing data today. Now, if we can collect that data and analyze that data automatically in real time, what kind of benefits are actually bringing to the floor? And let's say all agree upon the fact that if there is no data, we cannot analyze anything. And with nothing to analyze, we don't have any chances to improve. Point number 3, start simple. What are the low-hanging fruits? Where are you using paper on the shop floor? What are the KPIs that you're actually, or the key performance indicators that you're actually following on a daily basis? How are we updating them? And is this being done in real time? Or is this being done one time per shift, or one time per day, or one time per week? Anything that we can do where we get a continuous process where we're actually analyzing data in real time will be beneficial for us. And of course, last but not least, I think it's extremely important to find your digital ambassadors within your company. In other words, who are the ones that want to drive this forward? And I do believe that there will be many engineers that will, especially some of the younger generation that's coming now. And of course, you have to have some kind of support from the management. But find your digital ambassadors, let them be creative, let them give them the tools to actually make a change. All right. With that said, I'm gonna hand over to my friend Lee, and thank you very much for listening.
Daniel, excellent. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody from a very wet Manchester in the UK. I'm Lee. I'm going to take you through part 2. So what we're going to do is expand a little bit on Daniel's presentation. So, he's spoken about some of the challenges, some of the trends. So how do we address those? What can Tulip do to help us solve some of these problems? It's also going to set the stage on our platform a little bit, which will give you some extra context for Salim's presentation as well. But more importantly, talk about the pillars for success in manufacturing. You know, as we move away from old traditional methods of manufacturing, what are the pillars that we're going to need to support those, and how does Tulip enable that? So can I have the next slide, please? Felt like Boris Johnson there for my British colleagues. So Daniel's touched on this a little bit, but I mean, the headline there is most manufacturing systems we see, and certainly I'm sure some of you, if I could see, you might be nodding your heads, aren't human focused and don't really adapt well to the new challenges. Daniel's already mentioned paper processes. You know, how on earth do we try and uncover what's gone well? Well, more importantly, what's not gone well, if everything's either in people's heads or on bits of paper. We also see as well lots of what we call point solutions. So those could be things like Excel, you know, where we're capturing production data in Excel. That's a really common one. Or perhaps you've got specific applications that have been written to solve a particular manufacturing problem. And over time, you know, these just expand across a manufacturing facility. And the real challenge is you've got lots of silos of information, and trying to integrate those together and get some value from that just becomes almost impossible, because how do you create all these interfaces? Who maintains, updates them? As soon as you have an update to a software package, inevitably things break. So it becomes really challenging, again, to get that data that we need to make informed decisions. And then finally, you know, the other really common one we see are, you know, monolithic and legacy systems. And when we talk about these, we traditionally mean manufacturing execution systems that perhaps, you know, have been in for a number of years, could even be nearing the end of their life. But typically on-premise hardware, so you've got considerations about keeping that current. How do we update it? How do we patch it? Make sure it's secure. What are cyber security considerations? And of course, all that leads to the challenge of, you know, how do we maintain compliance? What happens when things changes? And if you're looking to introduce new ways of working and you need to adapt and change that software, it becomes almost, you know, in some cases a prohibitive exercise, just because of the cost of upgrading and introducing new functionality. So if we can have the next slide, what we should be thinking about really is what's the new approach that we need? What's this new approach that's going to introduce ease of compliance, ease of training, ease of introducing new ways of working? And these are the three pillars that Tulip's been built around, and this is what we see as the future of manufacturing. Just going to expand on those. I'm sure you can read them for yourselves, but first is we need to be agile and extendable. And what I mean by that is, just as an example, pre-COVID, supply chains were challenging for lots of manufacturers. Post-COVID, we all know about the challenges that we face. So if there's changes in materials, that means inevitably a change in how you manufacture things. If you're bringing in new components, how do you quickly adapt to manage and change your manufacturing processes to compensate for that? We all, you know, Daniel mentioned skill shortages before. You know, what happens if people leave and they take that knowledge with them? How do you quickly train up new staff? So we have to be very flexible and responsive to the changing world around us. Human-centric augmentation. That basically means we've all got one of these in our pockets. Why aren't we using these on the shop floor? You know, we shouldn't be sat there at desktops on the shop floor. All the systems that we should be using going forward, you know, we're in 2023, should be intuitive and simple to use. Why? Well, because Daniel mentioned that 70–80% of mistakes on the shop floor are made by humans. The more simple and intuitive we can make it, the fewer mistakes we're going to make. That obviously leads to improved quality, more throughput, and hopefully happier customers. And happy customers quite often come back. And then finally, purpose-built for operations. What do we mean by that? Well, I spoke about point solutions and some of the older systems that we see in manufacturing facilities. We need to be able to share that data. We need to be able to get that into a single platform. We need to be able to analyze it. We need to be able to work with it. So any new platform or system that we're working with should have that interoperability to be able to simply and easily connect to shop floors, to other manufacturing systems. But also Daniel spoke a lot about that slide, the investment that organizations make in ERP. Well, if you're making that big an investment, surely everything on the shop floor needs to be able to simply integrate to it as well. Next slide, please. So this is where Tulip comes in. So we take an app-based approach. So as Daniel mentioned before, we see lots of apps in IT. So we're bringing app-based technology to the shop floor. So just as you have an application for ordering a taxi, maybe for ordering some food, checking some weather. So in Tulip, we have apps that enable us to, instead of having a big software solution, we can actually break it down into little chunks, and we can just take, well, if I need to do some digital work instructions, there's an app for that. If we need to do some quality reporting, if we need to do some tracking and tracing, if we need to do genealogy, Tulip's got these apps already pre-built, ready, available as templates for you to use. Now, as you might have already seen, I'm guessing you've already looked at this slide whilst I've been talking, we are a no-code environment. So we've got our own app library. So we've got over 200 app templates in there that you can take and download and get started with yourselves. Or if you're really good with PowerPoint and you're a bit of a whiz with Excel, you can perhaps create your apps from scratch. It's a no-code environment. It's very visual, drag and drop. I mentioned PowerPoint. You'd be very comfortable in that environment. And then we have some trigger logic that sits behind it, which is if this happens, then do that. So it's very simple for you to either take templates, adjust them to your own requirements, or start from scratch. I mentioned connected as well, how important that is. On that video that you can see there, this is an example of how we're connected to a shop floor. We've got an Edge IO device there, and that allows us to connect to things like, you can see a pick to light system there, which guides operators to get the right parts from the right bin at the right time. But we can also connect to machines, barcode scanners, smart tools, anything that an operator might have as part of their daily work routine. But then, of course, moving up from there, we can connect to other production systems. So it could be things like process historians, lab management systems. You could have some SQL databases, anything that we need to capture information from, we can talk to. And then finally, of course, the important one is ERP. You know, we've got out-of-the-box connectivity to things like SAP and Oracle as well. So what we're building up is a holistic platform where we're capturing all your manufacturing data and information. And then, of course, finally, the important thing when we talk about the platform itself, it sits in the cloud. So I mentioned before that, you know, we have these old monolithic on-site, on-premise systems where you have, you know, expense with hardware and maintenance and upgrades and patching and security. Well, that all goes away because we take care of that because it sits in the cloud. So just for those of you technically minded who might be wondering, we sit on either Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure. But the benefit of that is that it allows you to start small and scale. One of our customers 18 months ago started with one site. They're 18 months into a deployment of Tulip now, and they're at site 57. So again, that really scalable capability, which helps you minimize project costs at the very start. Next slide. Oh, gone back again, back. That's it. So, oh no, forward. I feel like guiding you into a parking space. So that's it, the human-centric one. So just to give you an idea of then how we approach the world with Tulip, and it's slightly different. So what you can see on your screen there, this is in the middle there, you've got the app editor. So this is where you would build and test and deploy your applications. And then what you can do is very quickly push those out to the shop floor and get feedback from the people who are using them. The idea of Tulip is that it enables the people closest to the problems to manage their own solutions. So it might be, this is a verification application, but it could be a digital work instruction, it could be a reporting application, but you could push that out. The operators or whoever's using them can check it, give immediate feedback to the team, say, oh, I don't like the color of that, could you put that display there? Sure, no problem. They can quickly change it, push it out in minutes rather than having to wait 6 months for somebody in IT to make a change to it. So that's the philosophy. And then if you look on the next slide, what this allows us to do, we call it composability, but really what it is, if you think of it as an ecosystem. So we can have lots of apps, you know, you could potentially have hundreds of apps on your platform, but because all the data is in one place, you can start to share information across all these applications. And you can see there, this is, you know, just a typical facility you might have, but we've got things like production tracking and visibility. So these could be dashboard reports. We've got some customers who have these up in their production halls on displays to show, you know, what the production figures are for the day. Mentioned digital guided workflows. That's really common, just removing that paper process, capturing best knowledge from all your best operators, and then guiding operators through the best practice of processes. We can track things like quality and defects really easily, but then there's other things as well, like asset management. So we can look at production OEE, we can take into account safety and compliance, we can do audit and inspection. There's a whole host of things that we can do within our ecosystem because we now have all that information there. And if you move on to the next slide, what that really means is that it moves away from, if you look at the top line there, the monolithic system implementation. Typically, if we're moving away from paper on our shop floor and we want to introduce some sort of computerized system to do that, and I have to say, it's good that lots of manufacturers are moving away from this, you know, traditional waterfall process, but we still see it where you would define what you want to do on paper, you would look and map that into some sort of software solution, you would try it out, and then maybe 18 months down the line, you would get to some value or not. And then you have to go back and start again. And you've just lost time and money, and in a lot of cases, the will to live, because it's soul destroyed. So with this app-based approach, this allows us to develop, test, and discover value really fast. So we're talking about days, perhaps weeks, to develop an application. Does it work? Does it deliver value? Yes, it does. Great. Let's push it out to everyone, and then we can go and work on the next one. And what that allows us typically to do is, if you move on to the next slide, to really solve problems that have traditionally taken forever to solve. If you're familiar with life sciences, I've spent quite a bit of time there over my years. A cell and gene biotech company pushed out a full electronic batch record in 3 weeks. I mean, that's unheard of. I mean, we're talking probably a minimum of 4 to 6 months for that typically. We had a pretty big company pushed out a full MES in 3 months. That would easily have been 12 to 18 months for the old traditional approach. So you can see it's really about getting time to value quickly. And just conscious of time there, if we could move on to the next slide, just to summarize. These are some of the figures that our customers reported back to us. These aren't ours, they're theirs. But in summary, Tulip is a no-code cloud-based application platform that allows you to test, to deploy, to get to value really, really quickly. And Salim, who's going to be up next, is going to show you some real practical applications of that. And he's going to talk about some of his benefits that he's seen from deploying Tulip. So Salim, over to you.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you. Well, it's really great to be here and share our journey towards Smart Factory. And I will be talking briefly about what we have done here in ISE, and hopefully it may inspire other companies to proceed in the same direction. Next slide. So we have measured 10 tasks, and we could see an immediate effect from having to spend 290 minutes on different activities. And after creating our applications, we had reduced 265 minutes. And this has opened up a lot of time, especially for the supervisors, team leaders, and operators. So how did we get to this point? So before we dive into that, we must first look at how our situation was before. So we have the first one, we have communication. So this, for instance, was one of our biggest problems, because you want a confirmation that every operator has received the latest information about new work instructions, quality issues, it may be running changes, or what is happening in the company. So the traditional way is we used to sign a piece of paper, but it takes a lot of time and usually get lost during the process. And if an operator needs help from the team leader, it was very difficult to get the immediate support. So what we have done then, with help of Tulip, we have programmed an internal mail system So we can directly communicate to every operator and also verify that they have received the info by scanning their company card. And this confirms that they have read the information. They may also vote whether a change is good or not, or if they have any questions, they can provide us with immediate feedback. We can also add a reminder. So for instance, if they haven't answered, we can tell them that and remind them to read the information again. And because of this, we can see exactly how many people have received our mail. We have also implemented an unknown system, so the operator doesn't have to shout to get help from the team leader. By just simply pressing a button, they can send a notification to the team leader and receive help within seconds. So the next one is training, which was also one of a big problem for us. Because to maintain a high quality production line, we have to constantly educate our operators and perform operator audits to verify their knowledge. And normally this requires a lot of time because you have to gather all operators, you have to have an available room and also people that can teach them different categories. And this can't be done spontaneously, but has to be planned. And that's a problem for running production, and especially with our company being a just in time and having 3 shifts working every day, because we don't have the time to do this without stopping the customer. So with Tulip, we have made it possible so that all operators can access the training material, and when there's time, they can either watch a video or read a document and then afterwards perform a quiz and then get a certificate. And also here you can also add a timer. So for example, every 6 months, the operator must redo the test. And in that way, we verify their competence, removing the need to perform operator audits. Which brings us to the next one. We have competence matrix. So when we have like 500 operators in one single plant, it's rather difficult to keep track of which training and which stations they have been taught. So we used to store this data in Excel, but we all know that Excel can be manipulated, and we also didn't have any linked connections that visualize the competence with proof of validation. So with Tulip, what we did is we linked the competence matrix to training. So once the operator has received a certificate, it automatically updates their competence matrix and then allows them to work on a specific station. So in this way, we also encourage them to educate themselves in order to be able to work in more stations. And then we have quality. So as Daniel and Lee mentioned, when we have a lot of data, but if we don't use the data properly, for me, that is considered pure waste of time. And that was our problem, because we needed someone to extract the data and then analyze it, sort out the top quality defects, and then print out the papers and then hang it in every station. And another thing that we did to prevent that our operator kept sending the same defects to end of line, one of the team leaders' tasks was to write information about the defect on a piece of paper. That is a routine that we call quality feedback, and then show it to the responsible operator and having them to sign it. So the whole purpose was to highlight what defects they miss and prevent it from happening again. And then we have to store that data in Excel and analyze it. So, I mean, this process itself took up to 50 minutes. And we should do this to every defect that we send. So as you can guess, it takes a lot of time for the team leader to do this. So the good thing about Tulip is not only do we get all of our data in real time and also automatically analyzed, but they're also shown in all stations. So the operator knows exactly what defects are sent from and to the station. So what have they missed and what have they found? And not only that, but we also have automated the quality feedback and quality alerts. So once a defect is registered or we have received a customer claim, it is shown directly to the operator screen in form like a pop-up alert, and they are forced to sign it once again by scanning their company card in order to proceed with the work. And because of this, we completely remove the middleman, which is the team leader in this case, and they can focus on more value-added activities, such as finding the solutions for this instead of having to constantly write on a piece of paper. And we have also built in an internal escalations process. So if the production line has the same defect within a short period of time, it automatically sends a notification to the supervisor or above to take action. And which brings us to the last one, the Team Performance Center. So this is the place where we gather key team members such as supervisors, quality engineer, manufacturing engineer, maintenance, etc., to discuss the daily production. And the supervisor is responsible to update the board every day, and it takes a lot of time, like Daniel talked about in the first section. And since it's all written manually, we don't have any history record, and we can't see what was discussed in the previous week. We also use something that we call accountability notes, which is a small piece of paper that we write information about if something needs to be improved or if we have an idea. So it's basically like an action plan. And this piece of paper is tracked daily in the meeting, but once again, it can be manipulated, it can be thrown away, and therefore we lose a lot of valuable information about the issues that we have in production. So with Tulip, all of the information related to production, it's almost updated automatically, which means we reduce a lot of time for the supervisor. And also the accountability notes are now done digitally, so we can track every action and then get a proper analyze to see what kind of issues we have, how long it takes to solve them, and if they're not solved within the time period, it automatically escalates to the management team. Yeah, next slide. So this is the front page of our smart screen, as I call it. It has the same user-friendly as our phones, where you have like different kind of applications, and you have these red circles that are notifications, which means things that you have to do, same as our iPhone or Android phone. So the first app, it is training, and which we discussed already. The second one is quality. The third one is production, and in this app you can see all related documents such as work instruction directly in the station. You can also see how much time you have spent on every station. Therefore, you can build like an automatic rotation schedule. The fourth one to the lower left is the CI and IPS, where you can perform 5S audits. You can upload your idea or participate in a Kaizen workshop. The fifth one, HR and health and safety, where you can, for instance, report an accident. And the last and final one is information, where we have our mail system where we can directly communicate to the operator or where they can find latest information about the company, etc. So yeah, next slide. And this is the effect on the few tasks that we have measured. And the light blue color is the before and the dark blue is after. And as you can see, there's a lot of time that has been reduced, and even some of the tasks has been completely eliminated. Yeah. And the last and final slide. So what we initially liked about Tulip is that they had flipped the script. So instead of having to depend on one company or certain people to create the right application for you, Tulip provides you with all the tools, like Lee said, that's required to build the actual application by yourself. I mean, you could probably within a week or two create applications that would save you a lot of money. And instead of having to wait several weeks or months for a company to launch an application and probably pay a lot of cash, we could do this within hours or even days. So, and the best part is you don't have to be an expert or know how to program. They have this, like Lee mentioned, low code, no code, and drag and drop programming. You can learn within a week on, and you can start creating your own app. And to this day, there actually haven't been anything that we haven't been able to create. Every day we come up with new ideas from the production team, quality team. So we are constantly improving our production with these different kind of applications. And I used to say that the only thing that has been limiting us so far has been our creativity when it comes to Tulip, because there haven't been anything that we haven't been able to create. And yeah, that's it from my side.
All right. Wow. Thank you very much for the presentation, Salim. It's fantastic to hear, you know, the work that you've done. You being a true digital ambassador for IAC. I remember when we met the first time, and the vision that you had. It seems like you know, just within a couple of months here, you've been able to put that vision into some kind of a smart screen. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think the first time that the smart screen project was initiated was sometime back in, what was it, 2016, 2015 sometime?
Yeah, exactly. It's a funny story.
It's great to see what you've done so far, and I'm sure you have many more ideas on how to take it to the next level also. All right. With that said, I just want to just briefly say a few words about the slide that you see now. I mean, Tulip and Virtual Manufacturing have joined forces, so we have partnered up. The partnership itself has been carrying or been going on for quite a few years. So we are working very tight, very close together on more or less in a global environment. So from the virtual manufacturing side, we are supporting the Scandinavian countries. We have our office over in the UK, so we're supporting there. And we're also doing a lot together with Tulip over from our Asian operations over in Bangkok in Thailand. And yeah, I think the partnership has been great. I mean, we're super charged and excited to be part of this journey. And I think we've just seen the beginning so far. And you know, please feel free to reach out if you have questions or concerns. And yeah, anything to summarize, Kimberly, and at the end there?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lee, Daniel, and Salim. It's been great listening to you. We have got a few questions, but if you have any more questions, please type them in the chat. So we'll start with one for you, Salim. How did you decide where to start with your digitalization?
So as Daniel mentioned, I mean, it's a little bit funny because we have been planning this ever since 2017. And this is the project that I call Smart Screen. And it was actually one of my first ideas working as a production technician. And we wanted this all-in-one solution directly dedicated to our operators, team leaders, and supervisors. Some sort of like a tool to improve their production. So we had already then established the vision towards a digitalized factory. But the problem that we had at that time, all the companies that we reached out to, they could not offer us exactly what we wanted, or they wanted a lot of money because they had to program everything from the scratch. So what I did instead, I built the first demo on Excel using Visual Basic. And I mean, I love Excel. You can do a lot of things, but you're also very limited, and it's not sustainable if you start processing a lot of data. So unfortunately, our project was shut down. And if we fast forward it to 2023, we heard about Tulip through virtual manufacturing. And at first, it sounded too good to be true, because it was exactly what we had been looking for ever since 2017. So when I had my first meeting with Daniel and Jens from Virtual, at the end, I asked them, okay, what is the catch? And they were laughing and offered me 30 days of free trial. And so the next meeting that we had, we were basically done with the project. So I think they got a little bit shocked on how fast we did this.
Cool. Talking about free trials, Lee, is there any kind of free trial available?
It's a great question. I'm glad Salim mentioned it, actually, because we didn't touch on that in the presentation. But yeah, Salim mentioned the 30-day trial. He actually did his project in that time scale. So if you want to try it, find out for yourself. If you go to our website, www.tulip.co, that's .co, there's an option there to take a free trial. So just fill the details in. It's no obligation. We're not one of these companies that ask you for credit card details. Just put it in, give it a go. There's a few other things as well that you might want to think about. You'll also find links to our Tulip library that I mentioned during my presentation, where you can download some applications and tweak those and try them out as well. There's also our Tulip University as well, which you'll find links to. That's free of charge. It's got every single training course you can imagine to become an expert on Tulip. Typically, to get up and running, the basic courses take about 4 to 6 hours to complete. So please feel free, go check it out. If you need some help, let me, Daniel, know, and we'd be more than happy to give you some guidance to get started.
Perfect. We have one last question for you, Daniel. Can Tulip be used as an operator training system?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's since it is an operations platform, and the apps can be sort of developed based on what you want to develop yourselves. I mean, there are many disciplines that we're covering within Tulip, and when it comes to operator training system or work instruction system, that is one of the, I would say, key areas that we're actually focusing on. Of course, there's other areas like quality assurance or machine monitoring, etc., that are also there. But like Lee mentioned, my suggestion would be take a look at the available apps that are on the web page. We like to refer to them as an app store for manufacturing. So all the apps there are dedicated to manufacturing. There are a lot of templates that can be downloaded free of charge and just start experimenting. But for sure, definitely.
Cool. Well, thank you all for joining us today. I hope you've all found this insightful. We will send out a recording of the webinar to everybody after if you want to revisit any topics. If not, reach out if you have any other questions, and have a great day.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.